No matter how many times you fall, the only thing that matters is how you rise back up. Witness the incredible strength of the human spirit in our latest collection of cinematic stories about hope and renewal. Subscribe now and rise with us in every new episode.
I didn't cry when my daughter told me to leave my own shop. I stood there in the doorway with a box of inventory I'd carried up 3 flights of stairs, my hands shaking, not from the weight, but from what she had just said. And I didn't cry. I swallowed it. I turned around and walked back down those stairs alone, and when I got to my car, I just sat there for a long time staring at the steering wheel. I want you to understand something before I tell you the rest. I am not a woman who asks for much. I am 64 years old. I have worked since I was 17. I raised my daughter by myself after her father walked out when she was 3, and I did it without asking a single person for anything. I cleaned houses. I babysat other people's children while my own sat in the corner doing her homework. I packed lunches instead of buying them, and I wore the same 3 pairs of shoes for 6 years, and I never once complained about any of it because she was worth every bit of it. She was everything I worked for. Her name is Cassandra. She goes by Cassie. She is 31 years old, and she has her father's eyes in my stubbornness, and somewhere along the way she forgot where she came from. The shop was my idea. I had been making custom candles for about 12 years, started in my kitchen, sold them at church fairs and street markets, built a little following through word of mouth. People in our town knew my name. They came back every single time. I had a signature scent, a lavender and cedar blend I called Sunday Morning, that women would drive 40 minutes to buy. It was nothing fancy. It was just mine. When Cassie graduated with her business degree 4 years ago, she came to me with a proposal. She sat across from me at my kitchen table with a printed document, very professional, very serious, and she laid out a plan. Open a real storefront. Stop doing this out of the house. Scale up. She had all the numbers. She knew about suppliers and shelf margins, and she talked about social media reach like she was fluent in a language I was just learning. I listened to every word. I told her I didn't have enough saved to open a storefront. She said I didn't need to. I had equity in the house. I could take a loan against it. I want you to sit with that for a moment. I want you to understand what that means for a woman like me. That house was the only thing I had ever fully owned. I had paid it off 12 years ago, working double shifts for 3 years straight to do it. That house was my safety. It was the closest thing to a guarantee I had ever had in my life. And I signed it over as collateral because my daughter looked at me across that table with those bright eyes and said, "Mom, this is going to change everything for us." Us. She said us. I took out $80,000 against the house. We found a space on Clement Street, a good corner location with big windows and original hardwood floors. I handled the build-out. I sourced every fixture, painted the walls myself on weekends, learned how to install shelving from YouTube videos at midnight because I couldn't afford to hire it done. Cassie handled the business registration, the licensing, the bank accounts, all the paperwork side of things, she said, because that was her area. I trusted her. She was my daughter. Of course I trusted her. We opened in March. The line went around the corner on opening day. I stood behind the counter in my good blouse and I cried happy tears. And Cassie stood next to me and we hugged, and she said, "We did it, Mom." I have a photograph from that day. I keep it in my wallet still. For the first year, things were good. I was there every day. I did the candle making in the back, managed inventory, handled walk-in customers. Cassie did online orders, social media, wholesale inquiries. We split the work naturally. I thought we were a team. Then she started dating someone. His name was Derek. He was 35, very polished, worked in finance, wore the kind of clothes that made everything look effortless. He had opinions about the shop, strong ones. He told Cassie the branding was outdated. He said the name, we had called it Ruth's Candle Kami, after my middle name was limiting. He said it sounded like an old lady's hobby shop. I heard this secondhand. Cassie didn't tell me directly. I found out because I overheard her on the phone in the back room one afternoon, laughing and agreeing with everything he said. Things shifted after that. Small things at first. Cassie started coming in later, leaving earlier. She changed some of the shelf arrangements without telling me. She reordered product from a new supplier without checking with me first. When I asked about it, she said she was just trying to modernize. I didn't push. I thought she was growing into the business. I thought that was good. Then she changed the shop's name. I came in one Thursday morning and there was new signage on the window. Gold lettering, clean and modern. It said, Cass & Co. Not Ruth's, not ours, hers. I stood outside on the sidewalk and I stared at it for a full minute before I walked in. I asked her about it calmly. I asked why she hadn't talked to me first. She said it was just a rebranding. It was necessary. The old name wasn't searchable. She said Derek had done research on it. She said it the way you say something to someone who you've already decided doesn't need to understand. I let it go. I told myself the name on the window didn't matter as long as we were still building something together. I should have looked more carefully at the paperwork then. I didn't. 6 months later is when she told me to leave. I had come in on a Saturday, which was our busiest day. I had a new batch of Sunday morning that I'd made overnight. Packed in the wooden boxes, I hand-stamped myself. I was carrying them up the stairs to the stockroom when Cassie met me on the landing. She was dressed for something. Looked like she was expecting people. There were a few women inside, younger, well put together, and from the doorway I could hear them talking about the shop like they were evaluating it. Cassie looked at my boxes. She looked at my hands. I have arthritis. My knuckles are swollen. I know what they look like. She looked at me. She said very quietly so the women inside wouldn't hear. Mom, I need you to go. I have people here. Potential investors. You're not exactly the image we're trying to project right now. I am not exactly the image. I am 64 years old. I have arthritis in both hands from 40 years of physical work. I was wearing my work apron and a pair of sensible shoes. And I was carrying the product that built this business with my own 2 broken hands, and my daughter looked at me and decided I was an embarrassment. I set the boxes down on the landing. I turned around. I walked back down the stairs. I got in my car. I drove home and I sat at my kitchen table and I looked at the walls of the house I almost lost to fund that shop. And I thought about how I had handed her everything and she had handed me a role I didn't recognize. I didn't call her that night. I needed to think. Over the next few weeks, I noticed I wasn't being copied on emails anymore. Supplier confirmations that used to come to both of us were only going to her. I tried to log into our shared business account and my credentials didn't work. I thought it was a technical glitch. I called Cassie, and she said she'd look into it. She never did. Then I called the bank directly. I want to explain what happened next carefully, because this is the part that people need to understand. When I called the bank and gave my name, the representative asked me to confirm which account I was calling about. I gave the business account number, the one I had helped open, the one tied to the loan against my house. She pulled it up, and then she paused. She said, Ma'am, I'm showing that you were removed from this account as a co-owner approximately 4 months ago. You are still listed as the loan guarantor, but you no longer have account access or signature authority. I said, I'm sorry, can you say that again? She said it again. She said it again. I had not signed anything to remove myself. I had not authorized any changes to the account structure. I had not been notified. My name was still on the debt, the $80,000 secured against my home, but I had been removed from the asset. My hands went cold, the same hands that made every candle, that painted those walls, that installed those shelves. I asked the representative if there was any documentation on file authorizing the change. She said she couldn't share specifics over the phone, but that the change had been processed with the required signatures. She suggested I come into the branch in person. I went the next morning. The branch manager sat across from me and he was kind, but he was also clearly uncomfortable. He showed me the authorization form. There was a signature on it with my name. I looked at it for a long time. It was not my signature. I know my own handwriting. I have signed my name hundreds of thousands of times over 64 years. The letters are not shaped the way I shape them. The pen pressure is different. Someone had signed my name on a legal banking document, and that document had been used to remove me from my own business account while keeping me legally bound to the debt that funded it. I didn't say anything for a moment. The manager was watching me. Then I said, "That is not my signature." He went very still. I said, "I need you to document that I am disputing this, today, right now." He got up and brought someone else in, and they made copies of everything. And they told me I needed to contact an attorney. I drove home and I sat in my car in my driveway for probably 20 minutes before I went inside. I wasn't crying. I was past crying. I was in that place that only comes after a certain amount of pain, where everything gets very quiet and very clear, and you start to see the whole picture. She had planned this. Not in a day. Over months. The new account structure, the name change on the shop, cutting me off from emails, removing me from systems one by one. Derek had finance experience. He knew exactly what documents to change and in what order. My daughter had let him walk her through it. Or worse, she had walked him through it because she was the one with access to my signature on file. I called an attorney the next day. Her name was Patricia, and she had been doing business law for 30 years, and when I laid everything out in front of her, she did not look surprised. She had seen this before. Family businesses, she said. It happens more than people know. We filed a report with the bank's fraud division. We contacted the state business licensing office to audit the ownership transfer documents because Cassie had also, at some point in the past several months, filed an amendment to the business LLC that listed herself as sole owner. That amendment also had my signature on it. I had never seen the document before in my life. Patricia told me the process would take time. She told me to document everything I could. Emails, texts, receipts, photographs, anything that established my role in building the business. I went home and I spent 3 days going to every folder, every message, every bank statement from the early days. I had more than I realized. I had years of it. I did not call Cassie during this time. I didn't know what I would say. I didn't trust myself to say anything that wouldn't make things worse legally. Patricia had told me not to. But Cassie called me. About 2 weeks after I had started the process. She called on a Sunday evening and she was crying before she even said hello. She said Derek had left. She said he had been seeing someone else, had probably been seeing her for months, and that he had told her before he left that the business restructuring had been his idea, but that she was the one who had signed off on all of it. So legally it was on her. And good luck. He had handed her the consequences on his way out the door. He had walked away clean and left her holding everything. I sat there listening to my daughter cry on the phone, and I felt so many things at once that I couldn't separate them. I felt grief for her. I felt anger at her. I felt tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I felt the specific kind of sorrow that only exists when someone you love has proven themselves capable of something you didn't want to believe. I said, Cassie, I need you to stop talking for a minute and listen to me. She stopped. I said, I know about the account. I know about the LLC filing. I know about the signature. The silence on the other end of the phone was the kind that has a shape to it. She said, Mom. I said, not tonight. You need to come to my house tomorrow. You need to bring Derek's contact information. And you need to come ready to be honest with me, because I am going to find out everything regardless. And it is going to be much better for you if the truth comes from you first. She came the next morning. She looked like she hadn't slept. She sat at the same kitchen table where we had planned everything 4 years ago, with the printed proposal and the bright eyes and the word us. And she told me the truth. Derek had come to her about 8 months in. He had seen the numbers. The business was doing well, genuinely well, better than either of us had expected. And he had told her that the structure was inefficient, that having 2 names on everything was slowing down their ability to attract investors, that she needed to be the sole operator on paper. He told her it was just a legal formality. He told her her mother would still be involved. He helped her prepare the paperwork. She knew the signature on the banking form was not mine. She had used a sample of my handwriting from an old document in the business files. She had told herself it was temporary. She had told herself she would explain it to me later when the investment came through and everything was bigger and I would understand then. She had told herself a lot of things that people tell themselves when they are doing something they know is wrong. She did not look at me when she said this. She looked at the table. When she finished, I didn't say anything for a long time. I looked at my daughter, this person I had built my entire life around, and I tried to find the right words, and there weren't any. There's no sentence that fits a moment like that. Finally, I said, Do you know what it took to get that $80,000? She didn't answer. I said, I put my house up. The only thing I have ever owned free and clear, I put it up. Because you sat right there and said us. because I believed you meant it." She started crying again. I said, "Your crying doesn't help me right now, Cassie. I need you to hear me." She nodded. I told her where things stood legally. I told her about Patricia. I told her that the fraud investigation was already open, that the bank's documentation confirmed the forgery, and that depending on how the state audit came out, she was looking at potential criminal exposure, not just civil liability. She looked up at me then, for the first time since she'd sat down. I said, "I am not going to press charges." She exhaled. I said, "But you are going to cooperate fully with every part of the audit and the ownership correction. You are going to sign every document Patricia puts in front of you, correctly with your own hand. You are going to provide Derek's information so the bank can investigate his role. And you are going to accept that going forward, the business, if there is a business left, belongs to both of us equally, as it always did. Or it is sold and the proceeds go first to paying off the loan against my house." She said, "What if I can't keep it running without?" I said, "Then we sell it. That is the choice." She was quiet. I said, "I want you to understand something, Cassie. I am not doing this to punish you. I am doing this because I am 64 years old and I will not spend whatever time I have left being owed things by people who love me. If you want to be in my life, and I mean really in it, not just when it's convenient, then you need to show me something different than what you showed me on that landing." She cried. Not the panic crying from before, something quieter. The kind that means something is getting through. The investigation took about 11 weeks. The state auditor found 3 amended documents bearing signatures that could not be verified as mine. The bank completed their fraud review and confirmed the account authorization form had been forged. Derek, when contacted, retained an attorney and denied direct involvement in the document preparation. But the evidence trail from emails on the business account, which Patricia subpoenaed, told a more complete story. The bank closed the fraud file and reversed the account changes. The LLC was corrected by court order. My name went back where it belonged. Derek was not charged in the end. There wasn't enough to nail him with certainty on the document preparation specifically, but his name is attached to a documented fraud investigation now, and he works in finance, and I understand that it's had consequences of its own. I didn't need to do anything about that. The truth moved on its own. Cassie kept her position in the business. She had to. She was the one who had been running operations for the past several months, and she knew every system, every supplier, every wholesale account. We sat down with Patricia and we restructured the operating agreement properly. Every signature on every line, done right, witnessed, filed. 50% each. Clear roles, clear boundaries. We did not hug that day. That was okay. Some things need more time than a signature. The shop is still on Clement Street. The name on the window is different now. We went back and forth on it. Cassie wanted something neutral. I told her I didn't need my name on it, but I wasn't going to pretend the thing didn't have a history. We named it Sunday Morning, after the candle. The lavender and cedar blend that women used to drive 40 minutes for. It was already the best thing we made. It might as well be what we answer to. I work 3 days a week now instead of 5. My hands are what they are. Cassie handles the things I can't, and I handle the things she doesn't see yet. And we are learning, slowly, what it looks like to be honest with each other when the stakes are real. She came into the back room one afternoon about 2 months ago, and she watched me pour a new batch. She didn't say anything for a while. Then she said, "I don't know why I thought I had to do it without you." I kept my eyes on the wax. I said, "That is a question worth thinking about." She said, "I was embarrassed. Derek kept talking about how the brand needed to feel younger, more curated. I think I started seeing everything the way he said it instead of the way it was." I said, "And now?" She said, "Now I think Derek was the embarrassing part." I set the pour down and I looked at her. She looked back. I said, "Yeah, he was." It was not a forgiveness speech. I am not a woman who delivers those. But it was something. It was the beginning of something, which is different from nothing. And after 64 years, I have learned to know the difference. There are things I still carry. The memory of standing on that landing with my swollen hands and a box of inventory I had made overnight, and hearing my daughter tell me I was not the image. I will carry that for a long time. Maybe always. That is just the truth of it. But I also carry this. I did not sign my name away. Not permanently. I went to the bank. I called the attorney. I sat at my table and I sorted through 4 years of documentation, and I built a case out of receipts and emails in my own handwriting, and I put my name back where I put it the first time. The house is still mine. The business is still half mine. And some mornings, when I open the shop early, before Cassie gets there and the light comes through those big windows onto the hardwood floors I chose, I light one of the Sunday morning candles just to smell it. Lavender and cedar. My signature. Nobody handed me that. I made it. And no document with the wrong signature on it was ever going to change that. I know that now. I always knew it. I just needed to remind a few other people.